Report for today. It is a Thursday, March 13th, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host along with my son Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, we got a good show planned for you. For the next 3 hours, you're going to be treated to unbiased, uncensored news, information, analysis in these very perilous times. We bring you the news in 3D. We look well beyond the headlines, well beyond the bylines, well beyond the agenda-driven mass media to bring you the news, the analysis of the news, what's really going on. For new listeners, I want to say hello to just so many people. I've gotten so many various emails here, and I'm looking for my notes. I think, 12 cities heard from here today. Can't find them. So anyway, welcome. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base for the show. Currently, HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. Also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. Thanks for joining us tonight, folks. Thank you so much for spending your next 3 hours with us. We have a lot of things to get into tonight. Joe, it's great to see you here.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. And not quite. I'm not quite 100%. So, folks, I had some stuff done on my mouth yesterday, and I thought I was home free. So he said come back tomorrow, meaning today. Yeah. Oh boy, was I wrong. Let's just say I just finished spitting blood here within the last hour, and
I'm surprised that you were able to do the show after listening to you earlier today talk.
Well, folks, if you've ever seen Seinfeld, and I know, a lot of people think we're talking about stupid sitcoms but there's one episode where Kramer got, he went to the dentist or something, got Novocaine, and they thought he was a special needs person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, seriously, I acted, or I could have been just like that. Look, I was talking like a special needs person. And that's probably an insult to those people. I just couldn't. I was packed, and stuff was in my mouth, and I don't know what the heck was going on. But I had to go to the drugstore to pick up some medication for this, and she said, "Can I help you?" And I just had to point to the paper. And she looked at me like, "Oh, what's going on?" So I tried to talk, and she said, "Oh, never mind. I get it. So, and they dislocated my jaw too. But it was nice. He put it back in place.
Yeah, that was kind of surprising. I got a text message earlier this morning. My jaw was dislocated.
Yeah.
So I tried to call and find out what was going on, and after mumbling, I couldn't understand. We went back to texting, and.
Well, yeah, I had to use my wife's nuclear phone, NSA phone to text, and anyway, oh man, it was incredible. But so yeah, a dislocated jaw, and then he at no charge, he put it back apparently where it belongs. Although, man, that hurts.
Service like that, you just don't get it anymore. Somebody pops your jaw out. How often do they put it back in for you?
Well, that's true. He could have left it, I suppose, and I would have really had I can barely speak anyway, or half the time. But anyway, folks, I've been getting some emails. The pocket constitutions for those who have asked for them have gone out. We're getting very low.
There was a stack of mail I saw you take out to the post office the other day. Were those the...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, they are going out. There was a bunch of them.
Ontario, California, Lansing, Michigan, Bennett, Colorado, Foxworth, Mississippi, Chico, California, Newton, North Carolina, Ohio, Intervale, New Hampshire, Littleton, Massachusetts, Binghamton, New York, Chillicothe, Missouri, Carlsbad, California, Norman, Oklahoma, Highlands, North Carolina, and so on. And there's other ones I did not get, but you'll be getting those here. If you haven't got them already today, then certainly for tomorrow. I just want to say something at the opening of the program here, because I think this is important. We're seeing a lot of things take place right now in the world, and isn't it interesting? If you think back, we more or less live isolated lives. We're cut off from events worldwide, even though we've got that ability now, more so than before with the internet. Sometimes we know very little about what really goes on in different places. For example, Ukraine, or for any other cities here in the United States.
Right, and we talked about this many times, how the internet gives and has given rise to much disinformation.
Right, exactly.
And the truth that's out there is something that has to be sought after.
You know, we don't, or I suppose the majority of people, and I was thinking about this, we do pretty much what others do as well. We see the world from the standpoint of our very narrow-minded view. Now, except for our audience, but the majority of people out there, they have this view of the world, and it's a very narrow view. They don't really take the time. They don't have the adequate amount of time or the means to really search out and see what the heck's really going on. So when information about events that seem beyond reality are brought to our limited experience and knowledge, well, we mistakenly think such information can't be true. Now think about that. Having that type of a background or that narrow view, the average person cannot comprehend far-reaching changes. These are nearly always for the worse, these changes. But we can't comprehend them, or we don't see what's taking place in other areas of our country necessarily. We just read about it, glance at it on the internet, or we get someone else's take on it. This is why it's so important for the Obama disinformation people, just as it was with the Bush people, to seed the internet with information, with disinformation. So when we look at this, I mean, think about this. With that background, the average person cannot comprehend really far-reaching or heavily impactful changes that happen always for our detriment or to our detriment. If you're in Seattle, you don't really know with any degree of specificity what's going on in Connecticut. But it's interesting because there's a conspiracy out there, but a lot of people aren't seeing it. Not only are they not seeing it, they can't even begin to understand that we are part of a deliberately engineered plan to bring about the severe disruption to our lives. These events that we're seeing, these don't occur by happenstance. These are deliberately engineered events. But, no one perceives them as such, or few do, because it's far beyond their limited experience of them. Well, it's beyond the limited experience of the majority of people to think it's possible. Think about that. Can you just fathom, you, the listening audience, listening to this right now, what I would call the top 1% of intellectuals, and I mean that. I mean that because I have seen communications from other radio shows, and this one, the communications I receive are just absolutely incredibly different and better. But and you hear the quality of our callers. You hear, and we don't screen calls. We don't screen calls. We don't know what we're going to get on the other end. So fabulous, but what we're seeing take place right now are deliberately engineered dislocations, events, but they're not perceived as such because it's beyond the limited experience of most people to think that it's even possible. We are witnessing the end of the continuity of family life. How? Well, by the assault on our liberties. That's one way. The other way is by taking jobs away from the middle class. Can you imagine your job being outsourced to India, your job being outsourced to Europe or wherever? You think that's just by happenstance? No, not at all. That is deliberate. And the average person never, ever ascribes such events, distortions, upheavals in their lives to more than mere happenstance. Oh, if you do, oh my goodness. One forum calls it a woo-woo. I think it's a woo-woo. Okay, well, you just keep that mindset. You know, people have never had the occasion, the majority of people have never had the occasion to exercise their minds in any direction other than that narrow band, that narrow alleyway. Surprising given the type and scope of the education that they've undergone, or the sum total of their life experience, which has been pretty limited. Don't you think, folks, that's precisely what the controllers count on, what the handlers count on, in the attempt to enlighten anyone else to the contrary, whether it's in writing on the forums or in person? It's quickly put down. Hey, Joe, hand me my drool cup, okay? Sorry.
Sure thing. I got the bucket, actually.
All right. You know, the occasions for the average person to think beyond what is, or what they perceive as normal, very few and far between, if ever. And history to the average person is merely just a succession of events, of happenstance, of unrelated events. It never occurs to most people that the events that they view and the events in which they live through were manipulated into being the fact that higher knowledge, and now I'm talking about man's knowledge, not God's knowledge. I'm talking about man's plots and schemes, is kept away from the average person so that he can easily be controlled along with the countless millions of his fellow human beings. So they can act the same and believe the same. They're unenlightened, ill-informed manner. I mean, what the majority of people don't know and will probably never know is that all of the great historical events are planned in secret by individuals in high places with intent to deceive.
What's the saying that it's easier to catch flies with honey than with feces? And that's what they do, you know, through the devices and whatever it is that people want or are drawn to, they use in order to capture their minds, body, and souls.
You're 100% right. Now, I know, Joe, you and I haven't had a chance before the show to really do a lot of show prep, but, you know, I got to tell you this. Regardless of the societal structure, it doesn't matter what station in life the majority of people are. There's always been a group of certain individuals, or regardless of where you're listening to this broadcast, maybe that's a better way to say it. You could be in Canada, you could be in the United States, you could be in Central, South America, wherever. There's always been a group of certain individuals in whom the need to control is paramount. Now, over the last, 3 centuries, we've seen a rise in the number of various individuals and societies, generally under the heading of secret societies. You've heard Kennedy talk about that. We played the clip about that, the secret society speech. Oh, I know, it's edited down. It's edited down for time and content, but you get the idea. But without exception, what we're seeing is major secret organizations are forming history, shaping history. So tonight, when you look at the headlines, and today, when you look at the various headlines, and tonight, when we talk about the headlines, please keep that in the back of your mind. Please keep in the back of your mind that the majority of people who are out there today will never hear what you're going to hear, or at least never put it in the context in which you will have it.
We'll never seek to understand what they hear.
That's very true.
They, for the most part, and this is even for many Christians, are victims of their own delusions, their own belief systems, instead of God's true word, whether it's through science, technology, and the culture we have today, this instant media, game, device. I want it now. I'm going to have it now. We are our own worst enemies. Human nature is the problem. One of the reasons in the Bible why it's so emphasized as to why we need to break away from the carnal mind and have a spiritual walk is because of the damage our own carnal mind can do to our own spiritual growth. We're selfish, we're greedy, arrogant, prideful by nature, and those who do not work to break the bonds of these human traits get sucked into them to the point where they become exactly that.
Exactly, precisely. But on a terrestrial, even a non-biblical sense right now, just let's step out of that realm, that venue. We're looking at a lot of different people all across the internet who are attempting to expose what's being broadly described as conspiracies. And it's really generally agreed upon that despite numerous detractors, a growing number of Americans are believing right now that something has gone drastically wrong with this country. The only problem with this, and we fall into this as well, candidly, we tend to focus the cause of the trouble more narrowly on a variety of organizations. We look at, for example, the Council on Foreign Relations or the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group. Now, exposure of these groups is great, but oftentimes we don't go far enough. Now, we try to. I mean, it's our intent to go far enough. It's one thing to merely write about or talk about or discuss major conspiracy organizations such as the CFR and the Trilateral Commission. But are they the real leaders? Are they the real powers? John Coleman had written a book, and I believe it was, let me just double check this here. It's called The Committee of 300.
Who's the author?
John Coleman, that's Coleman. I believe this was written back in 1997 or sometime in the 90s. The Committee of 300. Folks, I would really urge people to understand who the Committee of 300 is and what the Committee of 300 is. Because by using the foot soldiers, for example, the front groups, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group, they have successfully concealed their existence from the broad mass of the American people. There are a few people out there who would actually believe that there is some kind of a coordination and controlling body that oversees and coordinates the activities, of local level agencies. John Coleman had done a lot of studies at the British Museum in London, and he was led to the conclusion that there was a major player somewhere in the mix, one with the reach and power to direct many secret societies that plague our world right now and back then. And he had gone back and researched, studied the French Revolution and such boring topics as the Anglo-Boer War, the 1905 Russian-Japan War, the Bolshevik Revolution, and especially World War I, which drastically altered the course of history in Europe and throughout the world. Why are we talking about this? Because is this old history? No, not at all. Because we're seeing a new world order developing right in front of us, but the players are the same players. The people are the same. The families are the same. The leadership is the same. There's a mastermind controlling body, this master controlling body. And it became clear to Dr. Coleman when he was studying the French Revolution. he discovered the existence of what is now known, or what is known as the Committee of 300. Folks, I would urge everyone to do a search on that and take your findings. And even I would recommend and in fact, Dr. Coleman has a website, I believe, but I would recommend finding a copy of the committee. It's called The Conspirators' Hierarchy, the Committee of 300. I don't think ever a book has been more appropriate than it is today. And again, the book is called The Committee of 300 by Dr. John Coleman, Coleman. The bottom line here is, as we look at the events taking place, the events that really mean something, the events that are going to change the course of our current history, the troops that are lining up in Russia. And by the way, Joe, didn't we say on this radio show that they were playing with World War III, or that World War III was getting ready? No, I mean, didn't we say that we were poking at Putin, and Putin was going to come out swinging, especially after the Olympics, and dead right?
Yeah, you said that before and during the Olympics.
Now, but are we looking at the potential? And I'm sorry if I sound like I'm saying, neener, I was right. Okay, that's not really what I mean to do. I guess I'm just trying to say, look at the bigger picture here. Don't take Ukraine and Crimea. Don't look at them through narrow glasses.
And we have a lot of news on Crimea and Russia and
let's get into
the U.S. today.
Right now, against the backdrop of what I just said, let's get into it. Joe, go ahead and take it.
Let's start with John Kerry.
Spit.
John Kerry has given Russia an ultimatum and said they have until Monday to reverse their course in Ukraine. This from the Washington Examiner. Secretary of State John Kerry warned of serious repercussions on Russia on Monday if last-ditch talks over the weekend did not resolve the crisis in Ukraine and failed to persuade Moscow to soften its stance. Kerry will travel to London for a Friday meeting with Russia's foreign minister ahead of Sunday referendum vote on the Crimea region to secede from Ukraine and join the Russian Federation. U.S. and European officials argued that Moscow is orchestrating the referendum and waging an intimidation campaign with thousands of Russian troops controlling the region. Now, to another report, they are reporting now that Russian army are amassing troops along the Russia-Ukraine border. 80,000 troops is the number reported to be exact, along with missile launchers, spark an invasion of fear. Russia has massed tanks, troops, and aircraft on the border. Security officials warn Ukraine defenses would be incapable. Pictures emerge of heavy Russian armament on the move. Tanks have been pictured and carried by rail. Russia's Army's Western Military District has declined to comment, and there are several pictures of the troop buildup. And they, in this article on the Daily Mail, it goes on to give a little graphic. Russian forces poised on Ukraine border, 80,000 soldiers, 270 tanks, 180 armored vehicles, 90 helicopters, 380 artillery pieces, 140 military aircraft, and 19 ships.
What's this all about?
Well,
what is Ukraine about? And folks, please, if you've heard this before, it bears.
It's about
repeating.
More than the area or land of Ukraine. This has to do with the European Union. This is a tug of war between the West and the proxy countries of Iran, exactly, and China and Russia. And
folks, on March 6th, 2014, this is a week ago today, if you can do a search on this, and Joe, if you can do this and put it in the chat room, on the Huffington Post, March 6, 2014, UNICEF Photo of the Year. Folks, it's a troubling photograph, an extremely troubling photograph. For the 2013 Photo of the Year award, UNICEF grabbed a very haunting image of an injured and bleeding Syria child to underscore just how desperate the situation is for the youngest of refugees. Now,
yeah.
Do you see the photograph there?
Yeah, I have several.
Okay. It's a child. It's a young girl, very young girl. It looks like she has lipstick on. I dare say it's blood and blood on down her green shirt.
Yeah, I got it here. Just finding one link that wasn't connected to Facebook.
Right. Why do I bring this up? Because the spin is absolutely wrong, incorrect. The Western intelligence agencies, NATO, the UK in particular, US in particular, France, and Saudi Arabia, combined, and if you can believe this, teamed up with Israel, have been poking Putin via Syria. We told you about this. And this is what absolutely should get everyone absolutely incensed. If you're not incensed over Benghazi, then really nothing should incense you.
No.
Or nothing would incense you, because Benghazi, folks, is the key to showing the absolute depravity of the people that we have in power.
I watched a movie last night after the show, Captain Phillips.
I saw that, yeah.
On the ship that was hijacked by Ethiopian pirates, making its way around the African Horn. And in the movie, the ship was taken over, and after the people who hijacked the ship, the 4 or 5 gunmen, one of them was taken hostage by the crew. Basically, they jumped in the lifeboat and took the captain with them. Now, in that movie, based on a true story, you had the U.S. Navy. You had one battleship and a couple destroyers, it looked like, there. You had the Navy SEALs there, all working to get this captain of this ship out alive, this Captain Phillips. Now, you think of Benghazi, and you look at the aid that was given to this Captain Phillips in the middle of the ocean versus U.S. consulate/CIA base.
Yeah. Don't even call it a consulate. It was a CIA operations center. The lobby was used for perhaps consulate purposes, but you're right, though.
So say they rescued the people from Benghazi. Would there be a movie like this Captain Phillips movie? Or would they dare make a movie about what really happened in Benghazi now?
I don't think they could or would. And ladies and gentlemen, again, because we have a lot of new listeners, please, Benghazi was never about the kidnapping plot of Stevens. Ever, 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 never, ever. And do we have a problem in the studio here? Okay, all right. Joe just jumped up from his chair. Anyway, it was never about a kidnapping operation, foil kidnapping operation. It was all about gun running. But with respect to Benghazi, this is a direct. If you look at Ukraine, you cannot separate Syria and Libya from Ukraine. You cannot separate the events of today from the events of 9/11/2012. It is impossible to do, or not impossible, it is intellectually dishonest to do. For it is the very same operational planning that went into Benghazi, or that I should say went into Libya, to establish this Ho Chi Minh Trail of weapons across northern Africa, out of northern Africa, and into staging areas in and around Syria. It is the same operational agenda that is at play against Russia, against Putin in Ukraine. But here is the difference today. People are looking at the troops now poised by Russia on the border of Ukraine. You don't think Putin is really PO'd? Yeah, he is. He's all of PO'd. And two, some people think, well, it's really not going to amount to anything. Don't kid yourself, folks, because this is this is a damn serious situation, an extremely serious situation.
The United States and Europe are threatening with this carry back ultimatum that they're going to impose sanctions on Russia. And meanwhile, in Crimea, the headline...
Say it with me. Let's say it together. Crimea.
Jittery customers run on banks in Crimea. Ukraine's largest banks as customers in the nation Crimean Peninsula are lining up to withdraw cash from their accounts as the region, occupied by Russian troops, prepares for Sunday's referendum on joining Russia. Lines of customers could be seen forming on Thursday outside other banks amid uncertainty over the peninsula's failure. It goes on to say that all banks in Crimea are struggling to deliver more cash to the region, whereas tensions are high between ethnic Russia and minority ethnic Ukrainians and Tartars. And it goes on to say there's a limit. Shinera said the bank has imposed a limit of $1,500 or $150 US limit on daily withdrawals across all of Ukraine.
So that's the blowback. That's just the minor blowback. Hurting
regular citizens of Ukraine. And China is getting involved, saying the West, warning the West not to enforce sanctions on Russia, which is exactly what this Kerry is saying to Russia, reverse course or we're going to impose sanctions on you. And Kerry goes on to say, we're talking through various options that may or may not be available. Our hope is not to create hysteria or excessive concern about that at this point in time. Our hope is to avoid that, but there's no telling that we can. U.S. authorities are closely monitoring the number of Russian troops in Crimea, as well as other movements, he said, noting that Moscow is allowed to have a total of 25,000 troops in Crimea.
All right.
You're muted.
I muted myself after. Okay, you'll have to again. I'm not 100%. Now think about what's going on in Ukraine and in Crimea, and let's double back here to Syria. Putin and Obama, well, more appropriately, Putin and Obama, by way of their handlers, are engaged in a geopolitical chess game in Syria and in Ukraine. And we have to look back, since reassuming his post has really, look what he's done. He has been consistent in addressing the most urgent geopolitical threats to Russia on an international basis. And front and center of this is Syria. Above all else is Syria. Putin has been engaging every imaginable means of preventing further destabilization of that situation or devolving in what easily could be a world war by miscalculation. Not only does that apply to Syria, it applies to Ukraine. If we look at what's going on in Syria, and please, this is all connects together. Contrary to what most Western media portray, if you go on MSNBC or NBC or CBS or ABC, you're going to see a bunch of bobble-headed, bleach-blonded bobbleheads describing some sort of long-standing multi-ethnic and religious tolerant state somewhat, but you're going to be treated to them saying, or you're going to hear where they're saying, well, Assad has oppressed other religions, and Assad has oppressed his people and killed his people. Kind of like a soft Gaddafi or a murky Gaddafi pre 9/11. Somewhere between Gaddafi and Idi Amin in terms of describing Assad. But what's the real issue here? Is Assad a good guy? Not really. No, he's a despot. Of course he is. But once again, you've got this multi-ethnic and really a religiously tolerant secular state. It's not an Islamic dictatorship. Bashar al-Assad is an Alawite. He's married to a Sunni His wife is Sunni. It's interesting because the Alawite sect, and this is important to understand, the Alawite sect is an offshoot of Shia, of the Shia sect of Brand of Islam. Now, Shia doesn't force their women to wear headscarves and are really liberal by Sunni standards. So if you look at Sunni standards, one example would be Saudi Arabia. They're Sunni. Iran is Shia. Saudi Arabia, women can't even drive. They're not allowed to hold a driver's license. And I mean, you look at the religious laws in Saudi Arabia and compare them to, for example, Syria. And this is important because we're on the side right now of Saudi Arabia, or they're on our side, or we're together, bed partners. And into this mix as well is Israel. How does that happen? Is it the enemy of my enemy is suddenly my friend? Well, that's part
Absolutely.
of it. That's part of it, though. But it's not the whole story.
Israel, as a government, is looking at this from a much different vantage point than the U.S. is, and working a much different. For the most part, many people will say it's survival. Israel is trying to survive in a region where it's surrounded by enemies and.
Correct, but you know something? Israel wants Assad out of there, and Kerry has said, okay, to Israel, you want Assad out of there, or you want Assad out of there. You must agree to a Palestinian state. Now that's the plan, okay?
It's not only the plan for Syria; it's the plan for Iran,
and it's the plan for the Middle East. It's the development of a Palestinian state.
And also, while we're looking at this, let's go back to something we haven't pointed out in a while. Countries that lack a World Bank or IMF central bank.
Go for it. Which ones? Well, Libya didn't, right?
Libya didn't have one. There were 7 countries in 2000. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, North Korea, Cuba.
That's right. Now, the IMF, what's the IMF doing in Ukraine? It's the first one to establish. You see how the bankers are playing this out? The bankers are really in control of the troop movements.
Yeah, there's an article, I'll have to find it, but Obama's new friends with Ukraine and the IMF. I think that was the title. It was very close to that.
Okay, folks. Now I realize that we brought up a couple of different, seemingly disparate topics here. I'm going to throw one more in there. The mysterious deaths with respect to the financial people, the bankers.
There was another mysterious death today, but not one of an active banking member, one of a former head of...
yes, and go ahead and tell people about this, but also, folks, when you hear this, just open your mind up a little bit. Remember, let's not look through that narrow alleyway.
And the people in chat have been discussing this, but John Corzine, his son, 31 years old, was found dead. John Corzine, the former governor of New Jersey, the head of MF Global, who stole $1.5 billion of customer money before being let go.
I love that. Exactly. So all of these things that we're talking about, we opened the show talking about the world of the majority of people, their world view. And as we get into this, please notice how that all fits in, how most people believe everything's happenstance, or this event causes this event, and it's all just kind of thrown together. It's kind of like the chaotic universe theory, but it's not. Let's go back to Syria for a moment. And why is Syria still such a hot item, or a third rail of the media? Why is or not Syria but Benghazi? Why is, you mentioned Benghazi in a room full of progressives, or no, you know what? I'm sorry. You mentioned Benghazi in a room full of politicians in Washington, and it's like, remember those old E.F. Hutton commercials? or was it EF Hunting when they talk, everyone listens and everyone just shuts up? You talk about a party stopper. Go to a Washington cocktail party with all the movers and shakers and just say Benghazi. They'll drop their tray of weenies. Here's the reason. The intent is to take down Syria. It's going full steam ahead. When Syria unravels, then don't take your eyes off of Syria. When Syria unravels, it is going to explode and grab Iran and grab Israel and grab every region around there. And yes, ultimately, all the way back to Russia, down into South Africa or North Africa, and even across Africa. It is going to be the tripwire for everything else. This is what they want to do. They, meaning this mysterious head organization, who even tell the Bilderberg Group, the CFR, and Trilateral Commission what to do. And when that happens, see, right now, what you're not hearing on the media, there are over 200,000 men, women, and children dead.
I'm sure that number's a lot higher now, and if you add in there what has happened in Iraq and with their civil war, we have civil war raging in Libya, in Turkey, violence gripping the whole region of the Middle East. Even now, we have rockets flying still into Israel.
Well, exactly. Well, what do they want? They want to cut down the population. Just in Syria alone, folks, and I reference Gajendra Singh, a retired Indian diplomat with just decades of experience in Middle East politics, and he's very familiar with the Middle East and Syria in particular. Take that 200,000. Any type of devolving of the Assad government will lead to the slaughter of Alawites, the Shias, Christians, and especially Christians, the Druze and the Kurds. It's anticipated, and this has been worked out. You're looking at the death, and I'm saying death, not expulsion or not the refugees here. I'm talking about dead people. 20% of a population of 20 million. That's 4 million Syrians alone in Syria. And who's pushing this? The West. The West. We're talking about the United States, the UK, France, Great Britain, the Saudis. Now, think back. I mentioned Benghazi, such a hot button issue. There were warehouses in North Africa from Benghazi to Misrata, owned by Saudi Arabia, by Qatar, by Great Britain, and even America. Speaking of the CIA operational headquarters there, but you're not hearing this on the news. And people, when they do want to push for the truth, like Cheryl Atkinson, well, she gets promoted and gets a peace. Oh, wait a minute, she didn't get a peace prize, did she? She got fired. I think it was CBS, right? We are reaching out to her to have her on and talk about this.
I actually have a report about this, and let me go to a few days ago here. She was a CBS journalist, resigns after being pressured over anti-Obama reporting. CBS journalist Cheryl Atkinson resigned today after facing pressure over reports she filed that were deemed to be overly critical of President Obama. This was from March 10th. Atkinson, who has been with CBS News for 2 decades, has grown frustrated with what she saw as the network's liberal bias and outsized influence by network's corporate partners and lack of dedication to investigative reporting, several sources said. She increasingly felt like her work was no longer supported, and it was a struggle to get her reporting on air. And she notes that she's characterized as anti-Obama, and because she was strict and tough on Obama and reporting on the White House scandals that have been going on, from Fast and Furious to Benghazi. A source close to Atkins told Politico that she was frustrated at CBS's lack of support for anti-Obama investigative reporting.
We're not going to get the truth out of the mainstream media. We know that, but this has become very blatant. This has become in your face. This has become such, and people, your neighbors, your friends, the people you sit in church with. If you go to church, the people that you wait in line next to in the grocery store, at the post office, they're not getting it. No, they're not getting it. This is so severe with respect to this agenda. This is extreme. You cannot get any more serious than what's going on right now.
And once again, thank God for our audience. Thank God for the platform He's given us, where the only way we can be forced out is literally somebody coming and trying to force us out physically, because we don't have any. We don't have an agenda, pro or anti-Obama. We don't have. The only thing we want to do is get the truth out, and we don't have a boss or a network editor,
correct,
who regulates our content or says what we can or cannot talk about. And this is the reason for the growing alternative media, and the reason why it is growing at such a rapid pace.
I believe that to be true. And when you say we don't have an agenda, pro or anti-Obama, let me just...
Truth agenda. I mean, we just want to get the truth out there. There's nothing that is in the way. We're not paid to say one thing or another.
Thank you. Okay, I get that.
Free of all strings, and that's why we are here to give you the truth. And the truth, the way we understand it, is the Bible-based view of the world, what has happened, what is happening, and what is to come.
Correct. And I just want to tip my hat to the listener, RR. Thanks very much for listening, number one, and thanks so much for your contributions to us seeking the truth and helping us seek the truth. But getting back to Syria here, this particular administration, or regime more appropriately, as well as that in the UK and everywhere else, they've been caught lying about everything that comes out of their mouths are lies about this. In fact, what is it, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, one UK journalist claimed he was deliberately led into a potential death trap in Syria by the Western-backed terrorists. He put them, rebel opposition forces, to score propaganda against the Assad-led forces. That's pretty serious. His name is Alex Thompson, and he gave his story to AP. So we got to go back in time a little bit. As painstaking as this sounds, before we can even begin to really understand the significance of the troops in Ukraine, the Russian troops, and what's going to happen there, we really need to be fully cognizant and fully understand the entirety of the shaping of the Levant and, of course, the Arab Spring, and we need to really be on sure footing with that. But the stakes in this current, as well as the former ongoing, I shouldn't say current, former, this ongoing geopolitical chess game is, well, first of all, nothing less than the survival first of Syria as a sovereign nation, regardless of its flaws, defects, and what have you. But it also involves the autonomy, the sovereignty, and the survival of countries like Iran, Russia, and China, together with other BRIC states. I'm talking Brazil, India, South Africa. Longer term, it involves survival of civilization as we know it, and the avoidance of a world war that would just decimate the world population. No, not by tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions, but by billions. Folks, this is what's at stake here. It's that serious. It's the survival of civilization as we know it. for Moscow, the Syrian stakes are pretty high. Remember, going back in time now, Russian President Putin, he drew a very, very hard line in the sand when he was referencing the survival of Assad and Syria as a stable, autonomous state. Has anyone ever asked why Russia at that time was warning of a possible world war if the West insisted to demand or to carry out regime change, as Hillary Clinton was so fond of doing? She never met a country leader that she didn't want to topple. Kind of like cow tipping. No, I'm not going to go there. Because Russia is intent on advancing, for example, its own imperialistic agenda in the Middle East. It's not. And I'm not elevating Putin by any means. I'm not elevating Russia by any means over the United States. I understand that there are people who think that, well, Putin is the greatest thing since, that walked the earth. But he's not. He's as bad as Obama. He's just he's got a lot more stage presence than Obama.
But recent poll out, this was a report from Drudge earlier today, showed Putin was a stronger leader than Obama. From the Washington Examiner, it says maybe it's the photos of him posing shirtless on horseback or the military push into Ukraine, but Americans in a new poll believe Russian President Vladimir Putin is a much stronger leader than President Obama. The poll was a survey of 1,000 adults interviewed between the 8th and 10th of March, found 78% view Putin as somewhat of a very strong leader, to just 45% of seeing Obama in the same way. So this is the public sentiment of Obama versus Putin. And we talked about the United States and the way that they view Putin, the stance. We talked about this with, I think it was Paul McGuire, how Putin is still he was a KGB agent. He is a kind of a ruthless guy. And with a few...
Not kind of. He was a lieutenant colonel in the KGB.
And it said that he massacred a village of people at one point in time. But with a few, anti-gay comments and seemingly to be more pro-freedom than our president, with what has at least been played or aired in the media here, that the public sentiment for Putin is better than it is for our current President Obama. Now, that says a lot as far as public perception. And these are public perception polls. It's not to see, the leaders don't want to see what we really think or feel. They want to see what they, and their propaganda, what effect it's having on us.
Well, there's a period of conditioning, a level of conditioning. It's interesting because I've seen reports, for example, centers on various think tanks, whether they're based in the U.S. or U.K. or even Canada, talking about conspiracy theories. It's interesting. It's interesting how some authors will say, and some members of the intelligence community will write a white paper that gets passed around the members of the NGOs for the government, talking about conspiracy theories, the diversions and deceptions, and how conspiracy theories just can't fail no matter how ludicrous they are. Try to falsify them as you may, the conspiracy theorists will just brush aside your evidence by asserting that you're part of the conspiracy against them and their theories. In fact, they might even say that you're a paid shill, in fact. And the arguments suddenly, folks, become circular and twisted, and logic goes out the window. That's because a lot of times, most of the time, going back to what I opened with, are we not arguing with people who don't understand the worldview, or that have a very narrow focus, or believe it just can't happen here, or it can't happen at all? And it's interesting how people will say, well, these groups don't exist. Well, my goodness, what about the brick and mortar headquarters and the branch offices of the Council on Foreign Relations? You don't think that that's part of a branch of the Committee of 300? Of course. Trilateral Commission and so on and so forth. They've got brick and mortar. I mean, it's so in your face. They've had it, but I mean, it's just so in your face. But let's get back to Syria just for a moment, and then we'll segue back into Ukraine and finish it up very quickly. We got about 4 minutes before the top of the hour. Everything that we're seeing taking place right now, you just understand this, is being done at the banker level and above, by the families, by the movers and shakers, by the Committee of 300, the top of the top of the top. All right, and understand that everything else we're seeing is chaff, radar chaff, to send the diversion. That's not to say that the people and entities that are involved in this are not involved, but there's higher levels to what we're seeing. What's the end game here? The end game right now is to create the economic regions which will ultimately usher in the one world government, the one world currency, and of course the great deception within the one world religious or spiritual leader.
Monotheist.
Yeah, it hurts to smile too. We're looking at a conspiracy at its highest levels here, folks. We're looking at this. The ultimate agenda here, again, is to form these euros or these economic zones. You're looking at Syria being. The West wants to get into Syria so bad they can taste it, and they're opening up another front for Putin in Ukraine. Putin has an advantage on the chessboard. His forces are not spread out all across the Middle East, all across the world, so he can, in fact, address the threat to Ukraine. What he believes to be his property, in the most simplest terms. He can afford to put those troops there. Can we? Can the West? Can the United States? How many fronts? We have attempted to open another front against Russia. But that opening of another front is actually going to really have a tremendous blowback for the West. Because what will happen, an errant missile, an errant shot, or just something planned or unplanned in Ukraine, or perhaps more than likely, with ISIS in Iraq going into Syria, will cause a series of events that we will not be able to walk back from. They will take down the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. This will put us absolutely right into a global economic reset, which is exactly what they want to have happen. The middle class, while it's systematically being wiped out, will instantly be wiped out. You will either be part of the royalty or part of the majority that can't afford anything, starving and subservient to a government, dependent upon government largesse, and therefore prisoners, not just in the United States, but prisoners of the planet. And the planet will be the prison guards, the guys with the keys and the women with the keys are the very people who are at the top of the food chain, the Committee of 300, and that, of course, goes into the families of the Illuminati, the Jesuits, the hierarchy now. I'm talking about the hierarchy. This is what we're looking at. This is how serious it is. So when we talk about Ukraine, think Syria. When we talk about Crimea, think ISIS and Iraq. They cannot be separated. Folks, you're listening to...
Ladies and gentlemen, hour number 2 of this Thursday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on March 13, 2014. going to hit one news article, then pass it back to my dad here. This from the Washington Examiner. Godless. 85% of French say faith in God is not necessary for morals. A whopping 85% of those living in France do not believe it is necessary to believe in God to be moral and good, putting the country at the bottom of a worldwide poll on religion and morals. A Pew Research Center poll of 40 nations found clear majorities saying that belief in God is needed to be and have good values. In the U.S., for example, those who say belief in God is necessary to be moral outnumber those who don't by 53 to 46%. But in neighboring Canada, 67% say it is not necessary to believe in God and to have good morals. Pew interviewed 40,000 plus people in 40 countries between 2011 and 2013. They found that richer nations place less emphasis on the need to believe in God to have good values than people in poorer countries do. The exception is the United States.
Let that percolate in your heads a little bit. That's incredible, Joe. That's incredible.
And my only problem is not to judge any person who say they believe in God from the U.S. who took part in this poll, but how many, and we'll just put all people that were asked in here, how many put it to practice rather than lip service?
That's a good point. One thing, just to continue from last hour, and perhaps one of the most important articles that is really, it's out there, okay? It exists out there. One of the most important reports that appeared today, and it's not being discussed in a lot of venues, but we're going to discuss it right now. And it's an article by Fox News. Well, no, more precisely, it's an article penned by Adam Housley of Fox News. Adam Housley has written this article. Now, I've spoken to Adam Housley, and I understand we've had conversations, multiple telephone conversations. I'm going to tell you, Adam Housley wants the truth and has been trying to, much like Cheryl Atkinson, trying to get the truth out there about the Obama regime in entirety, but specifically Benghazi. A report came out today, or he authored a report, published a report. The title is this: Very Upset. CIA sat on Benghazi investigation. U.S. personnel are fuming. Now, you can go to foxnews.com and find this published report today by Adam Housley. Ordinarily, if we talk about the mainstream media being corrupted, well, yeah, but there still are some people out there who are trying to get the truth out there, even within the confines that they're given. Folks, we have to remember that Chris Stevens, before his jig in Libya that wound up with his death, what was he doing? What was his position? He was really the number 3 man in which country in the Middle East? From the West. Number 3 man from the West in which country? Syria. And while Libya was still in the throes of the engineered civil war to depose Gaddafi and kill him, without mercy, kill him. Stevens arrived in Libya accompanied by approximately 100 CIA officers and contractors. Now, please, I'm trying to be very precise with the wording here. Stevens, even before Gaddafi was taken out, arrived in Libya with 100 CIA officers and contractors. He was really the number 2 guy in Libya, under the ambassador, of course, upon his arrival. American personnel, according to Mr. Housley, and I know this report to be completely accurate. American personnel on ground in Benghazi the night of the 9/11/2012 attack are really outraged after learning that the CIA's Inspector General never conducted an investigation into what happened, despite, he writes, Mr. Housley writes, despite 2 CIA workers being killed in the attack and despite at least 2 complaints being filed by CIA employees. Folks, you're correct. There were 2. I mean, Adam Housley is correct. There were 2 CIA workers that were killed in the attack. But more accurately, with Stevens, there were 3, if you count Stevens. You don't think Stevens was connected with the CIA? Of course. The CIA was told, and we as the American public, we were told, we were under the impression that an investigation was in the works, but an internal investigation by the CIA Inspector General, but that never took place. There was a source, Mr. Housley cites. Please listen carefully to my words. One person close to the issue told Mr. Housley they should be doing an investigation to see what the chief of base in Benghazi and station chief in Tripoli did that night. If they did, of course, they'd find that there were some major mistakes, but even more so, they'd find out that there was not just mistakes, but a major hanging out to dry here. An investigation would uncover just an incredible amount of information that the public does not know. When asked why such a probe had not yet been launched or was never launched, the CIA spokesman said, well, the Office of the Inspector General for the CIA, they always review every matter that is brought to their attention. And they take appropriate action based on a variety of factors. Well, still, at least 2 complaints were filed by CIA employees concerned about the attack, which began at this U.S. compound, the front house, we'll say, and spread to the annex, which is located nearby, 1 mile away, roughly. There's no question that the CIA personnel saved a lot of lives. Those on the ground that night continue to herald the heroism of the individuals who responded to try to help not just Stevens, but others that were under attack. But the questions still remain. The overall decision process is not known. Who made decisions? Who made what decisions when? And then, of course, there was the apparent, although Mr. Housley says possible, the apparent destruction of evidence and warnings of an impending attack. There needs to be a CIA investigation. There was a lot of things done wrong. I think that's according to one other special CIA operator. But a CIA spokesman said the OIG, the Office of the Inspector General, had already explained fully to the agency's congressional oversight committees why it did not open an investigation into Benghazi-related issues. Really. That decision was based on a determination that the concerns raised fell under the purview of the State Department Accountability Review Board, and that a separate OIG action could unnecessarily disrupt the FBI's criminal investigation into the Benghazi attacks. Remember the ARB, the ARB, the Accountability Review Board report that Hillary Clinton was talking about? That was ordered by her department, reported findings that were filed back in December 2012. That was the excuse why the CIA didn't launch the probe. But you know what? That's all BS, because separate investigations never, ever before stopped the OIG from investigating issues. Why, in this particular instance, they didn't open an investigation is extremely interesting and extremely telling. And many people within and outside of the agency are extremely upset and frustrated that they were told to stop any investigation. When we're looking at Benghazi, or when we're looking at the current situation with Ukraine, Crimea, go back and look at Benghazi and Syria. Same players, same objective. Well, same players minus those who have gone, such as Hillary Clinton, and but I still contend the Clintons have a hand in this as well. There's a growing frustration within the CIA folks, and that frustration is getting bigger and getting more aggressive. And there's a lot of agents, officers, assets very upset about this. Are we going to find out about this? No. You know why? Because all of the internal complaints are classified. Please, ladies and gentlemen, download or locate the report from Adam Housley, Fox News. Very upset. CIA sat on Benghazi investigation, U.S. personnel fuming. File that away. Just download it or put it on Word, paste it to Word or whatever program you might have. This is an extremely important piece of information. And understand the ARB report and were the origins of that. That was all engineered. You talk about the Warren Commission being lopsided. Well, the Accountability Review Board, Thomas Pickering, where does his allegiance lie? What's his background? Does he have any connection to, let's see, Iran? Yeah, he does. The layers of deception. They're just increasing. They're just incredibly, the deception's incredible. We're being lied to at every turn. There's nothing this regime says, nothing this Congress appears to say, Congressman, that is the truth. Every time they open their mouth, every time they speak, their lips are moving, they're lying. Benghazi is not a scandal. Benghazi is a crime. This all, and it's. Let me just expand this one more before we move on here, ladies and gentlemen. Go back to 2007, 2008, especially 2008. Look at everybody who had said, "Hey, Obama, eligibility. He's not constitutionally eligible to become president." And you had the big talkers saying it's irrelevant. Look at the policies. Look at what he stands for. But I contend and I assert that you cannot separate one from the other, especially with Obama. How little we knew about Obama and how much we were told that it was a distraction. And I'm going to tell you something right now. There are people out there, the talkers on the radio, the members, the heads of various influential internet forums on both sides of the political spectrum, the political pundits, whether they just showed up on a Sunday morning for the talk shows, the various heads of the political parties, all of them, without respect to political party, were involved in the facilitation of Obama taking over, selling out our country, and painting anyone who would question the legitimacy of the constitutional eligibility issue as not fruitcake and incredible, non-credible. But I contend you go back to that day, that time. We could have stopped all of this back then by proving the constitutional ineligibility of Barack Hussein Obama, if that's even his real name, because it's more about eligibility. It's about allegiance. You can't separate the two. What's going to happen in Syria, folks? What's going to happen with Russia and the United States going head-to-head is not just going to be limited to Ukraine, Crimea. Of course, that's going to be part and parcel to it, but the real explosion, the real big deal is not there. It's going to be in Syria. This is all about Syria. It's all about the Middle East. And it's all about the bankers taking control. And it's all about, more importantly, and perhaps even more precisely, it's about control of the future. It took me a long time and a lot of hits on the head, really, to understand that. Patient hits on the head to understand that. To think bigger than I was thinking. If there was if there was ever a time, folks, for all of us needing to think bigger, it's right now. Because what comes next? And I don't want to sound like I'm a fear monger, but what comes next is going to affect everybody listening to this program. My dramatic pause turned into a long period of silence. Sorry about that.
I was going to jump in there, and I was like, "Oh, wait."
No, go ahead. I actually am. I have to adjust my gauze. Go ahead.
Well, we do have news out of Syria. Congress seeks to restrict U.S. travel to Syria with a new bill that would levy harsh penalties for unauthorized travel. A new bill would severely restrict Americans from traveling to Syria and would imprison violators for up to 20 years for breaching the restrictions. The bill, authorized by Representative Frank Wolf out of Virginia, authorized in response to a large influx of foreign fighters in Syria, including at least 50 Americans who are suspected of training and colluding with terror groups in the region. The International Conflicts of Concert Act would officially designate a Syria country of conflict concern and prevent Americans from traveling there without a licensed approval by the Treasury Department, according to a copy of the bill obtained by the Washington Free Beacon. Additionally, the bill would prohibit U.S. citizens from providing material support of any kind to any group operating in Syria, including both pro-government and anti-government forces. Severe travel restrictions are necessary in order to stop the stream of Americans into Syria. Yeah, you see, I have a big problem with this because I would say the 50 Americans that they are reporting are fighting over there came from Guantanamo Bay or other terror-related groups. We know that people that have been let go out of prisons are over there fighting with the anti-government rebels. And this report goes on to indicate that at least 11,000 foreign fighters have entered Syria since the country's bloody civil war, which includes 50 Western Europeans and 50 Americans. It goes on to say U.S. citizens currently can travel to nearby countries such as Turkey and easily slip over the border. But now you will not be able to go to Syria without a permission slip from the Department of Treasury.
Got to get your permission slip.
Yeah.
Another aspect, folks, that is getting very little attention, and this, again, if you look at the bigger picture, where else are we feeling or going to feel the blowback from Ukraine, Crimea, Syria, and what have you? This is not being reported, or it's being reported by very few. A large-scale Russian espionage program was recently revealed by the British BAE Systems. The program has been in operation for the last 8 years without so much as the cyber community noticing. Experts claim that the code that's been insinuated or pushed into this network, the internet, the network, and to go against various infrastructure and platforms are Russian in origin. The code is Russian in origin. Its sophistication, scale, and complexity imply that this is taking place. This is a cyber computer type virus, and I'm explaining it just with words that I would know. at a nation-state level or by a nation. And it points directly to Russia. In fact, if you look at the code, there were Russian text or fragments of text written in Russian found between some of the lines of the code. You see, we are feeling the effects, not just the obvious, overt, visible effects in the form of troops lined up, Russian troops. We're seeing it elsewhere, and we will be seeing it more as time goes on. Because just like the Stuxnet virus, for example, if you don't think that there's an asymmetrical component to what's taking place, and Russia is going to strike back in ways other than just the visible, but the non-visible, the internet systems, the infrastructure, in this particular program or this particular espionage program, the Russian snake, as it's referenced, has managed to infiltrate some highly secure networks used by organizations and leading entities. It operates in a PC or Windows environment. It hides, if the victim is we'll say a power company, it hides their network traffic and remains under the radar of security systems. Once it completely infiltrates a system, the malware from this Russian snake suddenly is able to gain access to all of the information stored on the network without ever being detected. Folks, this is a big deal. This is a huge deal. You talk about asymmetrical warfare, well, there it is. There is cyber espionage on the horizon, and it's been 8 years in the making. Interesting.
In some other important news, on the biological flu front, we have reports of, we have an update here on the pig virus, deadly pig virus, spreads to Arizona, updating now 27 states that are affected by this disease or virus. For some reason, this article is real slow and pulling up here. But Arizona is the latest, as this virus is now infecting or affecting 27 states. And there are other cases of rare viruses that we have not seen, new viruses that are springing up. The RSOE map is a emergency disaster information service map, and it does an okay job, I guess, of reporting some of these biological hazards or rare diseases. And for all those bookmark that site, RSOE, it does a lot more than that.
Well, what's the name of the site that we should bookmark?
RSOE. It's Emergency and Disaster Information Service.
Okay.
And it will give you a list of events that are happening now, from anywhere from vehicle accidents to extreme weather, power outages, biological hazards, volcanoes, droughts, extreme weather, etc. It will show you, it has earthquake maps, it has mass animal die-off maps, tsunami, volcano, just about everything, near-Earth asteroids or objects. But it goes to, as this article from Yahoo's not pulling up, it does show, and you click on each, the details of an event, and it'll take you to a page, and you go to the description, and it'll explain exactly what is happening.
It's a very interactive feature. It's very good, actually.
Yeah, it is, and especially for real-time events. But it does get into a lot of things that aren't reported on the news. Different explosions that happen across the world, bird flus, as I said, and events from space. But this is something that you should definitely keep bookmarked and keep a watch on this. And I'm looking for, right now, the reports of the latest breakout of the pig flu. Let me see if I can go to the original source here and pull up this article again. It's actually on the lower right-hand column, a Drudge update, 27 states now affected by deadly pig virus. And for some reason, it's not letting me, so we'll move on.
All right. One thing we mentioned earlier, and I think that we need to spend a little bit of time on this, just to, if nothing else, just to kind of bookmark the situation, the financial situation, the financial insiders. Let's go back to the reference to John Corzine's son being found dead today. Today, March 13th, 2014, John Corzine's son was found dead in a Mexico City apartment of an apparent suicide.
He was a drug counselor and a photographer.
Right.
31 years old.
Right.
One of the three sons of John Corzine. And was in Corzine's near-death accident in 2007, was at his father's bedside throughout the whole ordeal, it's reported. And other, was it Ken Lay or one of the, not Enron, there was another son of a similar financial background that was committed suicide also. I want to say Bernie Madoff's son.
Okay, yeah, you're going back a ways, but I suppose what the reason I believe this is important when you look at this, I'll never forget the words spoken to me about from someone who said this is a reference to someone else. I specialize in celebrity suicides. Now just think about that statement for a moment. Okay, you had enough time to think about that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. But if you want to send a message, perhaps John Corzine committing suicide, perhaps John Corzine, something happening to him, might be a little bit, well, it might not do the job, but isn't it, couldn't we look at this perhaps as being, I don't know, a message that is being sent to people? You take out a family member, believe me, that hurts. And of course, John Corzine, well, who in the world is John Corzine? He was the former CEO of what? Goldman Sachs, the head of MF Global, former governor of New Jersey, as well as being a longtime close confidant of Obama and financier of Obama. Now, of course, all the stories are coming out. Well, his son, my goodness, his son, Jeffrey Corzine, was depressed, drinking heavily before the suicide in Mexico City. Yeah, he's out there by the pool with the Mai Tai, and depression becomes him. Now, look, I'm not saying I know. Perhaps he was depressed, and that's not to make light of depression or saying it can't happen even in the best of environments. But should we not take a look at this with a little bit of being a little bit jaded here and wonder if there's more to this? Because Corzine is a banking insider. He's controlled many top levels of the financial system. He was just interwoven and is interwoven in both politics and central banking, and he has been for the last 30 years. So what is the real story here? And don't forget, V, the guerrilla economist, and he told me directly, on air and off air, told every one of you, and told me on air and off air, as reported by Ken Shorjan Jr. in theexaminer.com, of course, writing for the Finance Examiner, saying that there would be more, quote, suicides or disappearances of people related to the financial industry to come. What are we seeing taking place here?
We saw that trader jump in front of the subway yesterday.
Yes. Now that's very difficult to, for example, to hide that. In other words, the circumstances around that. If you've got multiple witnesses of a guy jumping in front of a train, what do we have? Well, you've got a guy jumping in front of the train. But we also saw back during the 60s, did we not see people jumping out of windows? And even before that, the CIA experiments with LSD, with acid. In fact, a recent replay of Unsolved Mysteries had gone into the events of a military guy, or a military/CIA officer jumping out of a hotel window. And in fact, I believe it was during the. It was in the last. It might have been during Clinton's term. I'm not sure, but his family settled up with the government because it was admitted that the government was conducting experiments on him and others, and that his jumping out of a hotel window was a direct result of the mind control in play by the CIA and by the drugs, using LSD and acid, hallucinogens. So I guess what I'm saying to you is you can look at the situation of somebody jumping in front of a train, but who does that? Somebody very, very sick mentally, or could it be something else? Could it be a replay of someone taking a dive out of a closed window, by the way, because of being manipulated mentally in a rogue CIA-type program? And as we had said before, the CIA is heavily involved, as well as other intelligence agencies, heavily involved in mind control. So this is a natural thing, a natural progression, I suppose. And one thing that we will talk about in a future program, but I think it's imperative to bring this up as well, folks, the Tavistock Institute. It's imperative that we expose, or we understand and expose, all of the evil doings of the Tavistock Institute. That explains a lot. Identify what the Tavistock Institute is, and we'll do a program on it. Do you think that the CIA has stopped, or the intelligence agencies of the West have just stopped with mind control, with drug experimentation, No. And when we see the overlap between the intelligence organizations and the bankers, particularly with respect to surveillance, you've got to know that overlap is not just a mere overlap or happenstance, but it is an extremely critical part of the puzzle. So when we see things like John Corzine's son allegedly committing suicide, it is logical to ask the questions. In fact, it is imperative to ask the questions. And I know there are going to be people out there saying, well, I'm not going to shed a tear for the guy. Well, that's all fine and good. But think about the larger picture and think about how it relates to how you will be impacted if we allow and not expose this agenda to continue. It's not even a matter of compassion, although one needs to have compassion. It's a matter of operational interest and security and learning the playbook and plays and what's really going on at the higher levels. This is all part and parcel of that. Folks, I hope this is making sense.
It is. For the little amount I've been listening, it is making a lot of sense. No, I'm just kidding. You're doing a great job. Switching gears here, and then we can take some phone calls if that's all right with you. We have some
sure, man.
Let's do on the Obamacare. First, a HHS official has resigned, pens a must-read rebuke of federal bureaucracy. A Health and Human Services official has resigned after dealing with the frustration of the profoundly dysfunctional federal bureaucracy, which left him offended as an American taxpayer. In a resignation letter obtained by science leader David Wright, director of the Office of Research Integrity, which oversees and monitors possible research misconduct, offers a scathing rebuke of the unwieldy and inefficient bureaucracy that he dealt with for the 2 years he served in the position. In his letter to Assistant Secretary of Health, Wright explains that the 35% of his job that was spent working with science investigators in his department has been one of the great pleasures of his long career. The majority of his duties, however, represented his worst job ever. The rest of my role as ORI director has been the very worst job I have ever had, and it occupies up to 65% of my time. The part of the job is spent navigating the remarkably dysfunctional HHS bureaucracy to secure resources and, yes, get permission to serve the research community. I knew coming into this job about the bureaucratic limitations of the federal government, but had no idea how stifling it would be. According to Wright, activities that in his capacity as academic administrator took a day or two to 2 weeks and months in the federal government. He recalled an instance in which he could not get approval for a $35 cost to have cassette tapes converted to CDs. He eventually was able to get them converted in 20 minutes for free by a university. In another instance, he urgently needed to fill vacancy, but was told there was a secret priority list. 16 months later, he wrote, the position was still unfilled. Basically going on to write a letter of this dysfunctional bureaucracy, as he calls it. We also have news that the White House has effectively delayed the individual mandate through 2016, and the Obama administration has quietly and effectively suspended the Affordable Health Care Act's individual mandate, the linchpin of Obamacare, through 2016, according to the Wall Street Journal. Now, this is the administration breaking their own law. It goes on to say that...
See, Joe, I'm going to tell you right now, the president does not have, the person sitting in the office of the president does not have the authority to do that. They cannot arbitrarily change law. And, you know, it's interesting. If you're driving down the road and you're listening to the big talkers out there, they will say that. They'll say it. Even Glenn Beck, that station, the guest host had said it's a matter of Obama illegally engaged in changing law without the ability to do so. Everyone knows this, but there is not one congressperson, not one person in power on either side of the false political paradigm who is doing anything about it. We are truly a captured operation. At this point, how much more can we? I mean, we're truly captured. If I can get into one thing here, because I think it's really important.
Sure.
According to a Freedom of Information Act document, Homeland Security, the Department of Homeland Security is monitoring a number of sites. Boy, that's news, right? I mean,
actually,
news.
While you were talking, I read through the 88-page document that was released. You're muted.
This document, the function of DHS, Media Monitoring Capability Desk. Now think about that. MMC Desk, Media Monitoring Capability Desk, is to track news and websites and social media, including Facebook and Twitter and others, to gather critical information, or should I say information critical of the government. Now we knew, here's the issue. We knew that this was going on. But the skeptics, the people out there, oh no, we need to see it. If you don't have a picture, it didn't happen. Sometimes you just can't get a picture. Well, it was through an FOIA request, one of few apparently that really made it through, that this was verified. So, folks, here's the deal. The DHS, and more, ladies and gentlemen, are you not seeing perhaps that this is the Department of Homeland Security is in fact the agency that will be the rogue brown shirts for the Obama regime or the executive branch along with the IRS? I would say yes. But if you look at the document, and Joe, you said it was 88 pages. If you look at that document, the program, according to the document itself, the Media Monitoring Capability Desk, it's amazing that they even admit one exists. So in other words, you've got this government censorship office or this government surveillance office of news reports. But anytime someone tweets or posts something, a website in particular, now we're talking about, about the TSA, about about anything. They're put on a list. They're included on a list of sources that are critical of our government. First, topping that list, by the way, is the Drudge Report. And then, of course, you've got Alex+Jones and other, and I'm sure we're on there as well. But where this originated was from former Congressman Bob Barr, his Liberty Guard organization. They filed a lawsuit against the TSA after the federal agency refused to comply with the Freedom of Information Act request that sought to discover whether or not the TSA temporarily adjusted their policies for political purposes during the height of the National Opt-Out Day protest back in 2010. If you remember that, we talked about that at length. And in fact, that opt-out day, that opt-out initiative was heavily promoted by the Drudge Report. Well, in July of last year, the Pentagon announced, and this is kind of a side note, that they could no longer hide bad news stories because of websites that were disclosing the truth. And what they intended to do was tweak the news, so as when you read it on the Drudge Report, you will read something different on the mainstream media or within the mainstream media.
Did you see the story about Facebook and the NSA? The NSA posing as Facebook to infect millions of computers.
Yes. Now, how much of that has already been going on or has gone on? And we've seen numerous Facebook postings. We've seen numerous website postings just disappear.
Yeah, NSA pretended to be Facebook in an effort to infect millions of computers. This, according to a report from digitaltrends.com, also on Steve Quayle's website. It says, well, this is just special. As part of the efforts to install malware on millions of computers worldwide, the NSA impersonated Facebook to trick targets into downloading malicious codes. In some cases, the NSA has masqueraded as a fake Facebook server using the social media site as a launching pad to infect a target's computer. Hear those words? A target's computer. And exfiltrate files from a hard drive. Reports of the intercept in its latest top-secret documents obtained by Edward Snowden. In others, it has sent out spam emails laced with malware, which can be tailored to covertly record audio from a computer's microphone and take snapshots from its webcam. But hey, if you go on TV as a reporter and say that your computer can take pictures of you or listen to you, you are a crazy person. Apparently, the electrical tape on my laptop computer covering the camera qualifies me for my tinfoil hat.
I don't know, but I really have this feeling that my dishwasher is watching me. No, I'm just kidding.
You know, I've seen it look at me funny, too, when I walk by. I'm not saying...
and we make light of this, but how easy... You're talking about a total surveillance grid system. And is it really that? Once again, go back to the beginning of the show, what I mentioned. If you've got that narrow view, and I'm not really, I don't want to be disparaging to people, but if you've got that narrow view of things, where you would never think like this, we understand it, but you've got to expand. You've got to go on past the boundaries of your normalcy bias and understand that it's a changed world. So yes, you've got electronic instruments, you've got computers, you've got your iPhones and iPads and everything else that are acting as surveillance devices. And as investigators, we've seen a little bit, but not even close to the real huge capabilities of what these devices can do. So Facebook, Twitter, all the social media, and then, of course, we use the social media, Facebook and Twitter and what have you, for business purposes or for show purposes, with the full knowledge that anything we put on there is going to be intercepted or looked at by the powers, DHS and all that, as well as not only what we put on there, but where we put it on from. So are we worried about being tracked? No. But if you, as a listener, are worried about your privacy, you might want to rethink what you're doing.
Let's. I got a clip here of Dianne Feinstein talking about how the CIA and NSA have violated the Constitution for spying on congressional staffers.
Oh, this is precious, folks.
Let's take a listen.
Dianne Feinstein.
In early January 2014, the CIA informed the committee it would not provide the internal Panetta review to the committee, citing the deliberative nature of the document. Shortly thereafter, on January 15, 2014, CIA Director Brennan requested an emergency meeting to inform me and Vice Chairman Chambliss that without prior notification or approval, CIA personnel had conducted a search, that was John Brennan's word, of the committee computers at the off-site facility. This search involved not only a search of documents provided by the committee, by the CIA, but also a search of the standalone and walled-off committee network drives containing the committee's own internal work product and communications. According to Brennan, the computer search was conducted in response to indications that some members of the committee staff might already have had access to the internal Panetta review. The CIA did not ask the committee or its staff if the committee had access to the internal review or how we obtained it. Instead, the CIA just went and searched the committee's computers. The CIA has still not asked the committee any questions about how the committee acquired the Panetta review. In place of asking any questions.
All right, there's Feinstein in what has been called the hypocritical rant on CIA spying. She was actually interviewed by The Daily Show on Wednesday by Jon Stewart, who, according to this CNN article, tore into her for complaining about CIA removing classified documents from her staff's computers after giving intelligence community a pass on spying on private citizens. He joined a chorus of civil liberty advocates who say she's being hypocritical. What is incredible about these accusations is that they are not coming from Senator Ron, privacy is important, Wyden, or Rand, don't kill me with a flying robot, Paul, Stewart said. They are coming from Dianne, so the NSA is looking at your data, Feinstein. He then played a montage of clips showing the many instances in which Feinstein, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, has supported the NSA snooping on private citizens. And apparently, there is a fine line of freedom when it comes to government employees and the American public. See, it's okay to spy unconstitutionally on American citizens for the safety or for the sake of truth. But when it is turned around and used against the own government officials who implemented and cheerleaded its spying techniques, they don't like it too much. And that is very hypocritical. How can you say it is okay, constitutional, lawful to spy on law-abiding American citizens, at the same time say it is unconstitutional, it is breaking the rights of her and her staffers by spying on them? It is hypocrisy at its finest, and I say, if we're being spied on, they should be spied on too. There is no lines of privacy or constitutionalism. Unconstitutional spying, we'll call it, unconstitutional monitoring, is unconstitutional whether it's against a police officer, whether it's against a student, whether it's against a congressman or a president. It doesn't matter what claim or what position in society you hold, whether it is one of an elite Satanist or a law-abiding Christian. Spying on American citizens by the American government is illegal without probable cause and a warrant. It should not be broken down to these types of skirmishes where Dianne Feinstein, trying to, or inadvertently, coming across as a proponent of the Constitution, she's only sticking up for the constitutional rights she feels she has as a lawmaker, not as a citizen of the United States of America, meaning her rights are much more important, should not be violated, whereas John Doe, the average American citizen, should be violated, should be spied on because they're untrustworthy. But her holding a position of higher class, we'll say, a position of integrity, a position in the government is or should be exempt to the spying. This is the rationale she is exhibiting in her interviews and from that sound clip. So, yes, Dianne Feinstein is a hypocrite, and apparently it's only unconstitutional when they're spying on her.
Exactly. And, of course, we're going into the two classes of people, the haves, the have-nots, the powerful, and the subjugated. And
I'm just reading it, laughing at a comment from the chat room from Troy. Some animals are more equal than others. And sorry, I didn't know that, Troy. Appreciate it.
Well, absolutely. But to what end? We mentioned, of course, earlier about the social networking, the Freedom of Information Act request that produced a document that says, yeah, we're looking at those people, those entities, those websites that are critical of the government. Well, to what end, folks, as we come to the close of this hour? One of the key ingredients, of course, in a constitutional republic is the right to freely speak our minds, to type our minds to those and about those who represent us. It's one of the few of the effective tools that we have left to combat government corruption, demand accountability. But right now it's being chipped away, that right, by statutes, court rulings, and, of course, the covert operations that we referenced. At issue is really the criminalization of free speech. And I'll just close by saying this. If you go back and look at, in one example, a very self-serving move aimed more at insulating government officials from discontent voters than anything else, Congress overwhelmingly approved legislation that will keep the public not just at arm's length distance, but a football field away by making it a federal crime to protest or assemble anywhere in the vicinity of a protected government area. It's known as the Trespass Bill, the Federal Restricted Buildings and Grounds Improvement Act of 2011. Remember that, how it creates this mobile bubble zone or a perimeter around select government officials and dignitaries and offices and areas in a rather arbitrary manner. Well, combine that. Look at the progression as we go back to 2011. Look at those who signed that bill, ostensibly for the security and for the protection of the dignitaries and those who represent us. That same excuse, well, that same process, more precisely, is being used today, now on the Internet. The effects about the criminalization of free speech. This is what we're seeing, folks. Thanks for joining us for the second hour of the Hagmann Report.
From the Prophecy in the News Conference in Orlando, Florida. Folks, go to prophecyinthenews.com. Those of you who can't make it to Florida, they are offering a $50 fee. And with that $50, you will be able to watch the conference live, streaming on the Internet, and for 30 days after the conference is over. It is real-time video feeds with unlimited access for 30 days after the conference, and it's only $50, actually less than the price of admission for being there. They're going to have some great speakers there, like Bill Salas, L.A. Marzulli, Jonathan Kahn, Chuck Misler, Chris Putnam, Terry Cook, and many more, Paul McGuire. Many people who have been guests on our show, and after this is all said and done, hopefully we can have the rest of them come on the show. And this is prophecyinthenews.com. You go to their website. It is right there on the homepage, right in front for the $50 live stream. And personally, I cannot wait to go down to Florida. Our weather here has just been tremendously bad this year. It's been a long time since I've been in Florida. The last vacation I took was a couple-day honeymoon I had after I got married, and I know my dad and his wife and me and my wife are looking forward to meeting all these great people and getting a little change of scenery and an environment for a few days out of this Arctic area weather we're in, to go down to a nice and warm place where it is above 32 degrees for an average of 24 hours or longer in a day. So looking forward to that. Can't wait to get there. We're going to take calls this hour. You can give us a call at 661-244-9839. We're going to go to area code 717 first. Thank you for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, how you doing tonight? Good to talk to you guys. How you doing, Doug and Joe?
Very well. Central Pennsylvania, or Harrisburg area, Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, this is Sean from Central Pennsylvania. Last time I talked to you guys, I was talking to you about the Rothschild influence in Israel. That's not the topic I'm calling about tonight. I'm not going to beat the dead horse with that, but I just wanted to see if you got my email. I sent out an email with a website with some information on it to both of you, kind of highlighting the Supreme Court and the Knesset there.
Yes, I do remember getting that and going through that. Yes, I got that.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to really go through it in depth, but did receive it in good order and reviewed it. Now, what are you calling about? Go ahead.
I'd love to hear your any feedback that you guys have on that. If you guys can vet it and see if that information is correct, this way I'm not going down a rabbit hole maybe I shouldn't be going down. I'm just searching for the truth. I want to know what the truth is.
Okay.
But I want to talk to you guys about Ukraine tonight. And I've really been researching a lot of information in regards to what's going on there, what caused the current situation in Ukraine. And I just want to get your feedback on some of this information I want to share tonight with everybody on the Hagmann Report. I don't know if you remember, back in February 20, 2013, there was a report that came out that kind of was the spark plug to the situation that's going on in the Ukraine today. There was snipers that killed and murdered 21 people, and they were both on the protesting side and also on the government side, the police side. That kind of sparked the aggressive unrest that started to play out there. Do you remember that report that came out?
Yes, very, very much like the shades of the Victoria Newland, Jeffrey, can't remember his last name, conversation that made its way to the public, talking about stoking up both sides or being involved in the fomenting protests of both sides and death and destruction. Yes.
Well, I started studying into these snipers, and I found out these snipers is a third group that's not being publicized in any Western media right now. And this group, I found out who they were by tracking a phone call that was leaked. And it was from Estonia's, one of the people on the phone call, was Estonia's foreign minister, Urmas Paet. And he was speaking to the EU's foreign policy chief, which was Cathy Ashton. And they were discussing these snipers, and they were saying that they had no relation to any parties within the government, not the new government, not the puppet government that was installed, the government before that, and also to the protesters themselves. So I started looking into this third group, and who are they? And it led me down a rabbit hole into this group called Svoboda. It's spelled Cboboda. And they're a neo-Nazi group, and they are actually the most powerful, aggressive group that's moving in the Ukraine right now. And they call themselves the Socialist Nationalist Party. They have ties to the extreme Nazism. The leader of that group, his name is Olaf Kalibuk. And he wrote a letter in 2005 to the government of Ukraine titled "Stop the Criminal Activities of the Organized Jewry." So he's an anti-Semite. He's in numerous pictures with U.S. Secretary of Department Victoria Nuland and with John McCain. And then I also have a phone conversation between Victoria Nuland and somebody within the new puppet government that they're trying to install in Ukraine, speaking about Olaf Talibuk and how he's going to be the enforcement arm behind this new government. He's not going to be seen.
Correct.
But he's going to be a strong arm in regards to what's going on. So the Western powers right now are funding a neo-Nazi group in regards to the Ukrainian government. And I think that's the main reason why Putin did what he did, is he knew he was about to have a mess right on his back door.
Okay. Now, just for the listeners, let me just stop you right there and kind of recap this. You're talking about two different telephone conversations, of course. One being
correct,
and now, folks, with respect to Ukraine, the Kiev snipers, Estonia Foreign Minister Umas Payet tells EU's Catherine Ashton about the claim that provocateurs are behind the killings there. Now, this phone conversation leaked between the EU Foreign Affairs Chief, Catherine Ashton, and Estonia Foreign Minister Umas Payet. You can find this on YouTube. It's 11 minutes long. And now the other one, of course, is the conversation with Victoria Nuland of our State Department. So you're correct, because this, and folks, this is reported in The Guardian. This is not anything, and elsewhere. So this is not anything conspiratorial, like, oh, holy cow, this caller is just talking without having facts. This has been documented, yes. Now, but let me stop you there, because I'm not sure the neo-Nazi description is entirely accurate. That's not to say that they're not a neo-Nazi, but I think it's more of a let's define this a little bit better, okay? This neo-Nazi connection here.
Well, they have a website that you can go. Yeah, you can. There's a website on them. If you go to their website and if you type in CBO and track into their website, you can see that their website is pretty aggressive in regards to neo-Nazi, ideology. And they call themselves the Socialist Nationalists, which is exactly what the Nazi Party called themselves in Nazi Germany, except flipping the name, and they called themselves the National Socialists.
Exactly. Now, but my question to you, as you research this, and folks, I've done some research as well, is the National Socialist or Socialist Nationalist in particular, the genocidal aspect of that, which you're referring to, is that what is driving this group, or is this group being managed because of those proclivities?
Yeah, I think they're being funded by Western powers right now, specifically the two individuals I named, John McCain, I've seen pictures of John McCain meeting with the head of this party, and also Victoria Nuland speaking about this party in depth in regards to them installing them as a puppet government. I think the reason why they're using them is because this party is willing to do things that is very aggressive, very against humanity, and they think, the people in our government right now think that they can control these individuals, and I think they're out of their minds to think that they can control. They're releasing a ticking time bomb in that area, I believe, with the individuals they're trying to use to put in the puppet government that they want to put in over there, and regime change.
Okay. Now, let me stop you there just for a second here. I don't mean to interrupt, but I did. But let's look at the bigger picture here, okay? Look at what Russia and the Western interests are doing. If you look at this in kind of a bigger way, aren't the power brokers, aren't they attempting to carve up this world toward this New World Order type of template? But let's throw China here into the mix. Where does China fit into this? Because remember, a conflict between the U.S. or Western nations and Russia, who would that really benefit if it came out to really an all-out conflict? Would it benefit China as well? China could sit back and watch this cage match that's about to unfold.
Yeah, I agree with you, Doug. I think this is all tied back into, New World Order, the Illuminati bloodlines, Albert Pike's letter. I think we're seeing it unfold in exactly, I'm trying to report on like the ground movement in regards to the organizations they're using to do the dirty work. But yeah, I think on a global level, they're implementing the plan that's been laid out in regards to causing the chaos. I mean, these groups that they're using within these nations right now, Americans need to become very aware that these groups are going to be moving within America, and they probably already are. These neo-Nazi
I have no doubt.
These communist groups. And when we see things happen here, and I'm kind of using what's going on in Ukraine as a template of what they're going to probably use here, there's going to be probably a political protest that's going to happen very quickly in America once things start getting, south, like we're seeing them going already. And that's probably going to be an organic movement from liberty movements and people who are constitutionalists and Tea Party members, those type of people. And you're going to see the government trying to repel
American Spring coming up.
Correct. And you're going to see the government trying to control that. But I think there's going to be a third group that's going to be well hidden, or tried to be well hidden, that's going to be the real trigger to watch out for.
Oh, okay. I see where you're headed with that. Okay, I got you. Yeah, I kind of was. It was a little bit tenuous at first with me, blame it on my condition. But okay. So what you're saying is the existence of this subversive group, they're being used as tools, and of course they will be the perhaps one of the groups, if not the group, to as a tool to. Boy,
go
ahead, Joe.
The enforcement arm I've seen the Ukraine. The Ukraine, they were used as the group to destabilize the Ukraine, to take the organic protest that was going on in regards to the corruption that was going on in the government. However that started, and they were used to take that protest and make it something that it was not originally a movement as, and started to become a very physical confrontation. And they did that by sniping these 21 people on both sides to cause the feeling within these two groups, now the protesters and the government police, to start clashing with each other, and then they step back.
Gotcha.
And
all
now
right.
The Western powers are taking this leader, Mr. Talibok, who's in charge of this organization, and they're giving him a seat in the new government behind a Western puppet. I forgot his name, the guy that they were trying to install as new.
Yanukovych.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And
all right.
if you listen to the conversation with Nuland, she's talking how Talibok is going to be behind the scenes, and every 4 days, 3 to 4 days, the new leader of Ukraine is supposed to be in contact with Talibok in regards to controlling, being a strong arm of that new government. So he's almost, I don't know what you would call him, I don't know what title they're going to give him, but he is the main enforcement arm of what's going on in Ukraine. And I think that's not being shown on any news media here. We're just getting shown the two sides and saying that this is all the tensions came out of the two sides coming at each other. That this third group, the real spark plug, is not being shown on Western media at all.
All right. Well, in a way, no, I agree with you, but in a way, one can argue or assert that, well, what you're not seeing is the in building the house, you're not seeing the hammers being used. Comparing the hammer, we'll say, or a tool in building the frame of the house. kind of elevating the tool to a more important status. But I see what you're saying if you're looking at it from the ground, on the ground perspective. So who is this
I'm looking
group
at it at the
and
ground level. I know there's a lot of money and a lot of political movements going on within the country to accomplish what they want to accomplish. But I'm saying this spark plug to bring it to that point where they could even start moving on a political level. They needed this group to spark the unrest that we're seeing there today. And
gotcha.
You know,
right.
if you look back on like Syria, they used the same type of group, a third party, al-Nusra. They used that group to spark, and they brought in, you know, the al-Qaeda grouping into this organic movement in Syria, and they were the main confrontational group on the ground that took it to a whole new level. And that's the playbook that the globalists are using in all these revolutions that are happening in all these different countries. And I'm just putting it out there for, you know, the listeners in America to realize, or anywhere in the world, because I know Hagmann has world listeners, that this playbook that they're using on the ground level is a playbook that's probably going to be repeated over and over again into every uprising we're seeing. There's always going to be that third group that really is the group that you got to put your finger on and keep your eye on.
Very good. And this is both Russian tradecraft and intelligence tradecraft at its core, using various groups, especially groups that have the proclivities like you reference to get the job done. So thank you for pointing that out. And we're going to be writing more on that, talking more about. Yeah, go ahead.
So you and Joe, I just wondering what you see as the end goal as far as Ukraine. I mean, as far as what do you see them fully trying to accomplish? Because I know right now this conversation in regards to sanctions and in regards to Western powers. But what is the ultimate end goal with Ukraine? Do you feel that they were doing that to allow Russia to do what they're doing? Is there more of a agreement between the West and Russia to move in to destabilize and then restabilize?
What's the end goal? Well, let me ask you a question, caller. What's stopping the New World Order from marching and subjugating the entire planet to the arms and clutches of the New World Order? It's America, isn't it? It's not only America, but it's our freedoms, it's our sovereignty, and most importantly, it's our money, it's our dollar, because our dollar right now is propping the military that allows the free flow of energy and oil to all Western countries. You take that out, you take America out, and they now have the ability to usher in the New World Order, one world government, one world religion, one world economic system. So what's the end goal?
So you
take out the dollar.
You think this is a scapegoat that they're using to blame the collapse of the dollar on this situation?
Sure, why not? I mean, it's one of them. It's not necessarily going to be one thing. It's going to be multiple things, but this is a big part of it. Sure. Hey, we couldn't help it. Oh my goodness! If this didn't happen in Ukraine, or if this didn't happen in Syria, it would be a whole different ballgame. It was not planned. It's that's the end goal in my view. Anyway, that's what I believe will happen. Joe.
You know what amazes me, Doug and Joe, is I'm a child of a immigrant to this country of America. I saw my mom work 3 jobs to become an American citizen. I saw her cry when she became a citizen. I'm blessed to be an American, and it makes me sick into what we're doing today and how we are moving things and the death and destruction that we're causing. I mean, never thought I would say that. And I support our soldiers. I support, this country. I love it. But, my stomach churns every time I find this information out. And it's undeniable when you see people like John McCain. And John McCain, again, he was standing up when we were going into Syria. He was the biggest voice talking about arming the rebels in Syria. And now he's talking about arming the rebels in Ukraine. This man needs to be tried for treason in my book.
Absolutely.
Put him before a judge and move this guy out, because I can't believe the American public is putting up with somebody like him.
100%.
I know it's just not him, but he has my he's one of the people who got my blood boiling, and the nonsense that he's allowed to say in regards to what's going on in the world. You know, where are these
big
people's
arms trafficking? They don't have any, and it's not right. Caller, thank you so much. God bless you. We will look into the email that you sent and then the website too as well.
Yeah, have a great night. Thanks for the call.
Thanks, Doug and Joe, for all your work. I really appreciate you guys. Keep on keeping up the good work that you guys are doing.
And thank you. You have a great evening. Moving right along here, we're going to... Oh, sorry about that. 606 area code, we're going to come to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, praise the Lord, I finally got on. I admire you guys, and I admire your diligence in doing your research and everything. But
thank you.
I heard you mention the conference, the prophecy conference, a while ago in Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 3 gentlemen that will be speaking there that, you know, I would like to hear them on your program if I could. Bill Silas, and, you know, he has a book out about the Psalm 83 war.
Yeah.
We've had him on, yes, but we need to know you have him on again. Yep.
Okay, and Mark Biltz about the blood moons. And Bill Koenig is a White House reporter. So I think he would be interesting.
Sounds good. We can get Bill back, and the other 2 gentlemen. Certainly, we can try. And
track them down when you're there at the conference.
We'll do.
Last couple of nights, I've heard you speaking about the rapture briefly, but Holly Deo has a really good article on Stan's website about it. It's called "Setting the Record Straight on the Rapture."
Okay.
And you just go to his website and click on her articles, and I believe she wrote it in 2010. So I think that would be...
Check that out.
Okay.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm aware of the articles. You know, the rapture is something that people, I can guarantee you, caller, people are never going to agree on. And
I know that. You know, and it has nothing to do with our salvation.
Correct.
You know, I look forward to seeing you 2 guys in heaven one day. You know, it'd be fantastic to meet you. But you know, all these gentlemen that's at the Orlando conference, I think the majority of them are pre-trib.
Well, but you see, caller, here's the situation. We have people that come on our program, like Bill Salas is pre-trib, for example.
Yeah.
We have Steve Quill is adamantly not pre-trib. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, but when we ask people to come on, or we have people on our program, it's not to discuss the rapture. It's to discuss other avenues or other areas of their information. The rapture is so polarizing. It's unfortunate. But
that's
having
correct.
said that,
but I heard, I believe it was January 26th, Sunday night program with Steve Quayle and Pastor Langford, and you dedicated the whole show to the rapture.
Exactly. And you know, you don't have to agree with Steve Quayle or Pastor Langford. Personally, I happen to, and I'm not afraid to say that. I happen to agree with them with respect to the rapture, but others won't. But at the end of the day, let me ask you this: is it really? Is it going to? Is it going to affect our salvation? No. You know what it's going to do? Those people who adhere to a pre-trib rapture type of mentality, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not casting any. I'm not saying anything about that. But what's the danger here? The danger is the deception. That's all we're saying. Take a look at the potential for deception.
I'm preparing, you know, either way. You know, guns and ammo. Of course, ammo is hard to come by since Department of Homeland Security and the post office even's buying all the, you know, the bullets.
I was thinking about filling out a job application with the post office at my old age, and when they ask, you know, why I want a job there, is just so I can have a wholesale supply of ammunition. But I don't think they'd let. But yeah, you're right. I mean, things are going on very quickly at a breakneck pace here.
Yeah, but you always have people arguing about it, and they shouldn't be doing it because we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. About the rapture, but did you know that there's a pre-resurrection, pre-trib resurrection, and a mid-trib resurrection, and a post-trib, and a post-millennial resurrection.
And I'm sure there's a pre-American Idol one and a post-American Idol one. As many. And I'm making light of it here, of course, but yeah. I do. I believe that there are many belief systems, and everybody is going to argue about. When I say argue, debate with vigor and gusto, like I've never seen before. Yeah, is this where we want to spend our time? I'm just asking that question.
Like I said, I think everybody should prepare or leave, in case the pre-tribbers are right, leave stuff behind for other people, leave gospel tracts or whatever would be helpful. But I think we're on the precipice of the tribulation myself. I think it's really close because all the signs are converging together for the first time in history.
Birth pains. Yeah,
that's correct.
I definitely see the birth pains going on, and it's never been a time more important than now, especially to buckle down and to know the Lord. And as far as the rapture is concerned, if that's something that people feel is an important issue, that's something that they need to fast and pray and seek the Lord about.
Yeah, well, I think that's correct. But I think everybody's thinking more about it because these blood moons coming up, and this year, next year, that could pertain to Israel going to war either this year or next year or whatever. And when that happens, the tribulation can't be far behind. I'm surprised that, the burden of Damascus has not happened yet since the war's been going on for 3 years. And when that happens,
it's true. I mean, the timing of these events, we know the approximate time. Revelation 13 revealed by Pastor David Langford does set the stage and does tell us that we should be able to discern the time based on biblical scripture. So that's a good thing. Yeah. But in terms of but yeah, you've got the blood moons coming up. What's the significance of that? Of course, there's a lot. You've got books written by...
Not only the blood moons, but you have the solar eclipses in there as well. That's for the Gentile nations.
Right. And we could take these and, of course, apply different analyses of these events. And I'm of the opinion, we'll talk about all of them and look at all of the angles. Open discussion is good. But what really gets me, folks and caller, is when the discussion turns from an intellectual discourse means of good intent to this, when it degrades, and it's totally antithetical to the Christian, the whole Christian concept, I believe. And I know I'm going to get emails on this saying, oh, well, you should believe this and you should believe that. It's clear here. Why can't you see this? And we get them all the time. So, but
one more thing. I heard the program with Dr. Marquis, and I appreciate his intellect and knowledge of the Illuminati. But I believe you asked him about this Pope, whether he's the last Pope, and he said he didn't think so because the Illuminati needed more time. I didn't understand that.
Well, I'm not sure I understood it either. Dr. Marquis is a great guy. He's got a lot of great information. However, there are certain details of I don't believe we can know the entire plan with exact precision. And I also believe you're looking at a plan that, as we saw in Syria, a plan that could change based on events. We push back. If we push back hard enough, we could change events. I think this is possible. I have a real problem with this particular Pope, And I believe in the Tom Horn kind of way that perhaps there's more to this particular Pope today and the Vatican control, the Jesuit control that meets the eye. I really believe that. So, and we'll have to do an entire program on the Vatican and the Jesuit influence and the banking and all of that, how all of that connects. We'll have to do a program on that as well.
Yeah,
so we're hitting this in piecemeal.
I got one more thing, and I'll let you go. I saw on L.A. Marzulli's blog that a statement that the Pope has made recently that, all religions are true and that all religions worship the same God.
Well, okay, caller. There's a lot of statements that are being attributed to this particular Pope that have been skewed, taken out of context, or just flat out untrue. I haven't seen what L.A. Marzulli has written, but I can tell you this. I know Mr. Marzulli is extremely diligent in his research, so I'll have to take a look at that. Joe, I don't know, have you seen that from L.A. Marzulli?
No, from L.A. Marzulli, which we do have a call into. Hopefully we can get him on next week before the conference. But what the quote of all religions are true, that talks about the Third Vatican Council. And
we know that to be just totally bogus.
And the Washington Post, for whatever it's worth, it says, did Pope Francis really say that? Probably not pertaining to what you said. But there is enough out there that he has said and sides he has taken, which are...
Well, do you believe the statement that he said about atheists? That as long as they do good works, they'll go to heaven. They don't need Jesus. Yes,
I know. I did.
I think that's pretty strong.
That is strong, and it is definitely something to watch and to keep your eye on the Pope because of the times we are in, as we talked about earlier in this call, and what we're seeing happening. The Pope representing the spiritual aspect of the world is going to be very important in these times that we have now and the times that are coming.
That's correct. Did you see the video on Before It's News about Obama? Could this be the Antichrist?
Oh, yeah. I saw that.
Has a story about that lady that was killed, in the plane crash and how she was very close to his mother. And they were all into that. Yeah.
Caller and ladies and gentlemen, that references the organization Subud, S-U-B like boy, U-D like dog, Subud. Folks, Subud is a subject of our research right now. We're preparing a lot of information to expose a lot of information about this, and it seems to be this golden intertwining thread that connects a lot of people, both past and present, to what the goings on. So yes, without the Antichrist aspect, the cult or the organization called Subud is key. Folks, please, it's key. And yes, absolutely.
Well, the founder of that organization, they showed a picture of him on there, and he looks exactly like Obama.
Well, you got to be careful too, because some of those images, if you go back far enough, you'll see that some of those images were actually photoshopped, and it's admitted. Yeah, some of those were photoshopped. Now, that's not to say that there's not a resemblance, but the overlays, in particular the overlays that you're referencing, were photoshopped. So just be careful of. Yeah. Go ahead. One last thing before we move on.
Okay, one of the ancient pharaohs looks exactly like Obama too, and he even noted it himself, I believe, on one video I saw. So.
That was actually a sister video to the one you're referencing, and again, the authenticity of which I would question. However, I get the idea. Well, caller, thanks, buddy.
I'm not saying he's the Antichrist, but I'm not ruling him out. So most people have ruled him out. All the big talkers and everybody.
Well, we just got to keep our eye on it and see what happens, because the Antichrist won't be revealed until that time of trouble comes, and things are going to go bad from there. And we're going to have to move on tonight.
All right, I keep praying for you guys, and I pray for your mother-in-law, Doug.
Well, thank you, and I'll just point this out just for the listeners. Well, thank you. I'll just say thank you very much for your prayers.
And God bless you. Thanks for the call.
God bless you.
Have a great night.
You too.
Moving on, area code 512. We're coming to you next. 512, thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, you're welcome, Joe. Doug and Joe, good to talk to you again.
Nice to talk to you.
Hey, listen, and thoughts and prayers for you and your family.
Thank you.
Know it's got to be hard doing what y'all do and taking care of families. So we appreciate y'all doing that. Anyway, I wanted to make a comment on something Doug was commenting on concerning the suicides of these financially influenced people here that are killing themselves or whatever. I've been in the belly of the beast, and many years ago.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that I actually had applied for the CIA. So,
okay, all right.
I did so thinking, I grew up in a military family and did this out of, it's a long story. When you sit here and you try to tell things to people, over
Did
telephone.
did you make it to the farm or what?
No, not at all. It not even that far, but it was far enough to know. In fact, I'm going to tell you this. I feel like the Lord allowed me to go as far as I did to learn that this. I don't know how to explain what I'm saying. I think it's very much a spiritual thing when you experience what I experienced. Like I say, the Lord let me go there to see. This was years ago, back in the late 80s. A lot of their profiling tests. Now, to get a job, let's say, at a Sam's Wholesale or any prominent, just corporate job, the Lord was telling me later, after the fact, that the same tactics that were being used to be employed by the Central Intelligence Agency are now being used to be employed by any major corporation in America.
Right, and folks, they're using this very similar psychological testing. It's a template, and you know what? You can even go back. I had mentioned the Tavistock Institute, and again, we have to do a program on this, but folks, search the Tavistock Institute and get to know that. Dr. John Coleman talks about that. However, the psychological component for especially the larger conglomerates that are part of the handful of corporations that actually control this country or have this dominant presence here, use these psychological tests, which I find interesting. Now, does that mean something? Well, it could, but
it definitely does, Doug. Let me tell you, when they go the profiling, in fact, the series of tests were very stringent, to get in, and I understand that because you're when you get into that, that's to be expected. And then, of course, when you're young, you're gung ho, and you just you're going to lay down and do anything and everything to get the job, okay? But there were some very strange questions on the profile, like
now before you go further,
out of body. Pardon me.
Well, now, before you go further, we're talking about not necessarily the position of a Walmart greeter or a cashier, just as an example, but we're talking about the when you advance the mid-level to upper-level management qualifications type of profile.
Even in some of the just to get a job, simple profile. Okay, I'll cut to it because there's not a lot of time here. I could go on. I've kind of drifted off on what I was going to say. Basically, what I was saying is I was going to confirm what you were talking about as far as the suicides going on, that, they have advanced their techniques as far as brainwashed operative to, let's say, like the Born Identity type person. They can take that type to a different level to even kill themselves, to think that the mission, okay, they can put so into the mind of a person that their mission is to kill themselves, and that would explain someone jumping in front of a subway train, or someone jumping out of a building because they just feel so compelled to do that. Okay, they have the techniques to do that through now. I mean, it's more advanced than just slipping someone some LSD. Now they can do this through electromagnetic pulses, pulses that interact with maybe drugs that, prescription drugs that a person's taking, so on. I mean, it is so defined to a science now that it's just another method of assassination is what it is. I guess you would call it assassination by suicide. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it makes sense, and everyone should really understand what this gentleman's talking about. You're talking about a generation, if you will, of people. I mean, just imagine like a Manchurian Candidate type situation.
Yes, and they can do that, and they can do it widespread. It's not just it's not just designated to the operative or agent that they've employed. They have done now, what they used operatives and agents before as experimental pieces. Now this thing is widespread to where it's to the citizenry. Okay, it's open to anyone that they can say that they can mold and bend to whatever devious agenda that they have up their sleeve, and they can say, oh, well, look, see what this crazy person did. We have to instill, a police state, if you would, to prevent such craziness from happening. You see what I'm driving?
That is one angle, and one legitimate angle, yes. And you've got the flip side of that as well, where these actors can be used to, just think Sirhan Sirhan. For example, So I mean, there are a number of angles that can be used, but yes,
and no telling how long this type of stuff has been going on, And that's why when I look at these bankers or people that are out here that do this sort of stuff, and I question everything, Doug. Now,
we have,
because it's like because I witnessed it. Okay, just going in on a very, very low level. The interviewing process and so forth, and one key question that stands out really strong in my mind that was on the profile, and of course I know they always say, well, we're just trying to trick you up to see, how honest you are, this sort of thing, but I think it's deeper than that. This question, that came out. It says, and I remember it, okay? Because they have a lot of things like, I feel like it's one of these things where you say, I agree, or I disagree, or I strongly agree, those sort of things. And but one question that stuck out in my mind, I believe in the second coming of Jesus Christ. And right then, it was like something just came up in me, and I said, wow, and I felt like, why would they ask this question specifically?
Now, what company, wait a minute, was this the CIA?
Yes,
was
this
this
was
the CIA?
This was my interview with the CIA.
Okay, all right.
And then they also asked, about having out-of-body experiences, if I believed in different forms of meditation and a lot of New Age type beliefs, in my profiling. And I looked at that and I said, when they ask about, and at that time, I guess because I felt like I was fudging on some of the questions, because there's so many of them in there, and you want the job. You're thinking, I've got to have this job to work for my country. But then you come to that and you feel like you're being put on the spot. I want to tell you how I felt. I felt like Peter, the apostle. I felt at that time, I said, I can't deny my Christ. And I felt like it was almost like there was a denial that was supposed to come into play. Does that make it was very much a spiritual thing.
Well, and I think there are a number of questions, even as equally disturbing as that one, and that certainly out of body experiences.
I felt like too a lot of those questions were pre-programmed questions, or they weren't really questions; they were statements. I feel like I'm being poisoned. I feel like someone is following me. I feel like and a lot of these things are. You see these type of questions in security. I've been in the security business off and on, and they're trying to detect if there's any paranoia or this sort of thing. At least that's the premise that's behind them. But if a person is given some sort of electromagnetic or chemical type enhancement, these questions could be more of a suggestive thing rather than... Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely, caller. And we're going to have to cut you loose as we're running up against the end of the program. But thank you for the call and the insight. And seems like you made the right decision, and you are where you should be now.
I just think that I feel like the steps of a righteous man are ordered of the Lord. And, I honestly feel that, no weapon formed against me shall prosper,
Amen.
And if God has me in his hand, no man can pluck him out of that. So, God has seen me through some very difficult times, and that is the hope that we have, that not a hair on our head shall perish.
Absolutely. Thank you for the call. God bless you. You have a great night. And
God bless y'all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, we got a few minutes left of the show here. One quick item I'll hit on before we close up here for the night. FBI blocked in corruption probe involving Senator Reid. Agents quietly working with Utah prosecutors to make a case in DOJ absence. FBI agents working alongside Utah state prosecutors in a wide-ranging corruption investigation have uncovered accusations of wrongdoing by two of the top U.S. Senate's most powerful prominent figures, Majority Leader Harry Reid and Republican Senator Mike Lee, but the Justice Department has thwarted their bid to launch a full federal investigation. Another example of constitutional law pertaining especially to those in office. In this case, it's corruption under the law being protected. And when you have instances of America not doing any wrongdoing, they get spied on by the NSA, FBI, CIA, and here we have lawmakers who are doing things that are provably illegal, yet they being the investigators are stopped dead in their tracks because of their perceived special status in the government of those they're investigating. It's very screwed up.
What would the probe reveal is the question. And why would the Justice Department throw cold water on the investigative probe?
One, whether both or either politician sought to receive money or benefits from donors and fundraisers for favors. And two, whether Mr. Lee provided accurate information when he bought, then sold a Utah home for a big loss to a campaign contributor and federal contractor, leaving his mortgage bank to absorb large losses. Two of the top charges here on the list.
Okay, and I would contend that's the official explanation. There's more to it than that. There's much more to it than that on both sides. And in fact, this is something that we'll be getting into toward tomorrow's the end of the week, but we're going to develop this.
Yeah, how interesting is this?